It was my birthday, but the air felt thick with tension. Mom had insisted on hosting a small gathering, despite my reservations. As I mingled with family and close friends, her presence loomed like a dark cloud. "Samantha, darling," Geraldine crooned, sauntering over with a sickly sweet smile. "Happy birthday." I forced a polite nod, my skin crawling at her manicured touch on my arm. "Thanks, Geraldine." Her sharp eyes swept over Marie, playing nearby. "You know, if you spent less time on those silly online courses and more time with my granddaughter, she might not be such a handful." The backhanded jab stung, but I bit my tongue, not wanting to create a scene. Geraldine thrived on drama. "I heard Marie got into that prestigious elementary school." Jenna, my childhood friend, chimed in with an encouraging smile. "That's incredible," Geraldine scoffed. With Samantha's lackadaisical parenting, I had to pull a few strings. My cheeks burned as humiliation washed over me. Jenna's expression morphed into one of discomfort. "Mom, that's enough." Mitchell's firm voice cut through the tension. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his brow furrowed. "Why don't you mingle with the other guests?" Geraldine waved a dismissive hand, the corners of her mouth tugging downwards. "I'm only speaking the truth, dear." As she sashayed away, I caught the self-satisfied glint in her eye. My fists clenched, anger simmering beneath the surface. Mitchell leaned in, his voice hushed. "I'm sorry about her. You know how she gets." I offered a tight smile, my mind whirring. This was just the beginning. I could feel it deep in my bones. Geraldine's tactics were calculated, her barbs precisely aimed to chip away at my confidence, my role as a mother, a wife, an individual. But I wouldn't let her win. Not this time. It was my birthday, a celebration of life, and I refused to let her venomous presence ruin it. This was just the opening salvo in what was shaping up to be a battle of wills. In the days following my disastrous birthday, Geraldine's lingering presence felt suffocating. She would drop by unannounced, her calculated smiles putting me instantly on edge. With each visit, I grew increasingly wary of her intentions. "Have you given any thought to my business proposal?" she asked one afternoon while sipping tea, her gaze fixed on me. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. "Mitchell mentioned something about a joint investment, but we haven't discussed the details." Geraldine's perfectly arched brow raised ever so slightly. "Well, you should. It's a golden opportunity, one that could secure your family's financial future." The way she enunciated "your family" sent a chill down my spine. Before I could respond, Mitchell strode into the living room, his expression guarded. "Mom's right, Sam," he said, exchanging a loaded glance with Geraldine. "We should consider it seriously." My gut twisted with unease. The thought of entangling our finances with Geraldine's scheme made me deeply uncomfortable. Later that evening, as Mitchell and I prepared for bed, I broached the subject cautiously. "What exactly is this business deal your mother's pushing?" He let out a weary sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's some import-export venture she's involved in, supposedly low risk with high returns." "And you trust her?" The words came out sharper than intended. Mitchell's brow furrowed. "She's family, Sam. Why wouldn't I?" I opened my mouth to respond, but snapped it shut. Arguing would only breed more tension between us, something Geraldine undoubtedly relished. In the following weeks, Geraldine's persistence intensified. Whispered conversations with Mitchell became increasingly frequent, their body language tense and hushed. A nagging suspicion took root, one that I couldn't ignore. The breaking point came when I overheard a heated exchange between them in the kitchen. Geraldine's low, venomous tone made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. "Can't let her jeopardize this, Mitchell. Our future depends on it." My heart pounded as I strained to make out Mitchell's muffled response. When they emerged, their expressions were unreadable. That night, as Mitchell slept beside me, a newfound resolve settled over me. If Geraldine indeed posed a threat to my family, I would do whatever it took to expose her malicious agenda, no matter the cost. With Geraldine's unrelenting pressure, the idea of investing in her business venture gnawed at me incessantly. Mitchell, however, seemed increasingly swayed by her silver-tongued promises of financial prosperity. "Sam, I think we should seriously consider moving forward with this," he broached one evening over dinner, his expression earnest. I set down my fork, apprehension churning in my gut. "I'm not comfortable tying up our savings in something your mother is involved in." Mitchell's brow creased. Why the hesitation? This could be our ticket to a more comfortable life. At what cost, though? I countered, keeping my voice level. Your mother has a history of manipulating people for her own gain. What if this is just another scheme? He let out an exasperated sigh. You're letting your personal issues with Mom cloud your judgment. This is a legitimate business opportunity. My jaw clenched as frustration bubbled within me. Before I could respond, Geraldine's perfectly timed entrance effectively ended the discussion. Over the next few days, Mitchell's demeanor shifted. The easy camaraderie between us grew strained, our conversations clipped and tense. Geraldine's influence was palpable, driving an invisible wedge between us. One evening, as I cleared the dinner dishes, Mitchell approached with a solemn expression. I've been thinking about Mom's proposal, he began, his tone cautious, and I believe we should go for it. My heart sank as dread washed over me. Mitchell, please don't do this. He held up a placating hand. Hear me out. Mom's right. This could secure our future, give us the financial cushion to provide for Marie without any struggles. I opened my mouth to protest, but he barreled on. I know you have reservations about her involvement, but she's agreed to have everything legally documented. We'll have full transparency. His earnest gaze bore into me, and I could see the unwavering conviction in his eyes. In that moment, I realized the true extent of Geraldine's manipulative influence over him. Swallowing hard, I nodded reluctantly. If you truly believe this is the right move, then I'll support your decision. The words felt like ash in my mouth, but I knew arguing further would only strain our relationship to the breaking point, undoubtedly fueling Geraldine's twisted agenda. As Mitchell pulled me into an embrace, relief etched on his features, a sickening sense of dread coiled in the pit of my stomach. I had just allowed Geraldine's venomous tendrils to slither deeper into our lives, all in the name of preserving marital peace. Little did I know, this was merely the first step in her meticulously orchestrated scheme to shatter everything I held dear. In the weeks following our agreement to invest in Geraldine's business venture, an uneasy feeling persistently gnawed at me. Mitchell, however, seemed increasingly at ease, a stark contrast to my growing trepidation. It started with small discrepancies in our joint account statements, unexplained withdrawals here and there, amounts that didn't quite add up. At first, I brushed them off as clerical errors, but their frequency soon became impossible to ignore. Mitchell, have you noticed these irregular transactions? I broached one evening, printouts in hand. He glanced over them with a furrowed brow. Huh? That's strange. I'll have to look into it. But the days turned into weeks, and his reassurances grew increasingly vague. My suspicions deepened, fueled by Geraldine's frequent, unannounced visits that always seemed to coincide with Mitchell's evasive behavior. One afternoon, as Mitchell hurried out the door for a business meeting, something compelled me to follow him. Call it intuition or sheer desperation, but I knew I had to uncover the truth. Keeping a safe distance, I tailed his car through the winding city streets until he pulled into a nondescript office building. My heart raced as I watched him disappear inside, emerging nearly an hour later with a blank expression. Instead of heading back home, he drove to a nearby bank, one I didn't recognize. Curiosity and dread warred within me as I lingered in the parking lot, watching him through the tinted windows. When he finally exited, clutching a manila envelope, I knew I had to confront him. As he approached his car, I stepped into his path, my hands trembling. What's going on, Mitchell? I demanded, my voice quivering with a mix of anger and fear. His eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed defensively. Sam, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. I gestured to the envelope. What's in there? More of our money being funneled into your mother's schemes? Mitchell's jaw tightened, and for a fleeting moment I saw a flicker of guilt cross his features. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a stoic mask. It's none of your concern, he replied coolly. I'm handling our investments with Mom. You need to trust me. My hands balled into fists at my sides as fury coursed through me. Trust you? After all the secrecy and lies? His gaze hardened. Don't make this into something it's not, Samantha. Now, go home. We'll discuss this later. As he brushed past me, the dismissive finality in his tone felt like a slap to the face. In that moment, the harsh reality crystallized. Geraldine's insidious manipulation had driven an impenetrable wedge between us, shattering the foundation of trust that had once bound our marriage. The confrontation with Mitchell left me reeling, a sickening realization dawning. Geraldine's manipulation had eclipsed our marriage. As the days crawled by, an icy silence descended between us, the once warm rapport reduced to stilted interactions. I knew I needed to gather concrete evidence to expose Geraldine's schemes, but the thought of going it alone filled me with trepidation. That's when Lucas, my tech-savvy friend from college, came to mind. "Sounds like you're dealing with a real piece of work," he remarked after I laid out the situation, his brow furrowed in concern. "But if anyone can help uncover what's really going on, it's me." Relief washed over me as I clutched his reassurance like a lifeline. With Lucas's expertise in cybersecurity, I stood a fighting chance against Geraldine's web of deceit. Over the next few weeks, we meticulously combed through financial records, bank statements, and online trails, anything that could shed light on Geraldine's motives. The picture that emerged was increasingly disturbing. "Sam, you need to see this," Lucas announced one evening, his expression grave. He laid out a series of documents detailing a complex network of shell companies and offshore accounts, all traceable back to Geraldine. "It appears she's been funneling funds from various sources into these accounts," he explained, his voice laced with disbelief, "including sizable sums from your joint investment." My stomach lurched as the implications sank in. Geraldine had been systematically siphoning our hard-earned savings, leaving a trail of breadcrumbs that would undoubtedly lead to our financial ruin. "That's not all," Lucas continued grimly. "I dug deeper and found similar patterns involving other relatives, draining their accounts, exploiting their trust for her own gain." White-hot fury coursed through my veins as the full scope of Geraldine's depravity came into focus. This wasn't just about money. It was a calculated, cold-blooded betrayal of family bonds. In that moment, any lingering shred of doubt evaporated. Geraldine's true nature had been laid bare. A manipulative, remorseless serpent hell-bent on destroying lives for her own twisted gratification. As Lucas outlined our legal options, my mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. But one certainty crystallized amid the chaos. Geraldine would face the consequences of her actions, no matter what it took. I would expose her deceit, strip away her ill-gotten gains, and reclaim the life she had so insidiously tried to dismantle. This was no longer just a battle for my marriage or finances. It was a war for justice, retribution, and the restoration of everything she had sought to corrupt. And I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. Armed with the damning evidence Lucas had uncovered, I knew it was time to confront Geraldine head-on. The thought of facing her twisted machinations sent a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. The opportunity presented itself at the next family dinner, a gathering Geraldine had orchestrated under the guise of strengthening bonds. As I arrived with Mitchell, the tension was palpable, like a coiled serpent poised to strike. "Samantha, darling, you're looking radiant as ever," Geraldine simpered, her cold eyes betraying the venom laced in her saccharine tone. I forced a tight smile, reminding myself to maintain composure. "Thanks, Geraldine. Shall we join the others?" As we filed into the dining room, I caught Mitchell's concerned glance. He knew something was brewing, but the depths of my resolve remained inscrutable. Once we were all seated, Geraldine cleared her throat, her gaze sweeping over the gathered family members. "I'm so pleased we could all come together like this. Family is the bedrock of our lives, and we must cherish these moments." The hypocrisy of her words nearly made me retch. Before she could continue her duplicitous monologue, I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Cut the act, Geraldine," I spat, my voice reverberating with barely contained fury. "We all know you're nothing but a manipulative, self-serving snake." Stunned silence descended over the table as all eyes turned towards me. Geraldine's expression morphed into one of feigned hurt and bewilderment. "Samantha, I don't understand." "Save it," I snarled, slamming a thick folder onto the table with a resounding thud. "I have proof of your deceitful schemes, the offshore accounts, the embezzled funds, the trail of broken families you've left in your wake." Geraldine's mask slipped, her features twisting into an ugly sneer as realization dawned. "You stupid girl," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "You have no idea what you've done." In that moment, her true, monstrous nature was laid bare for all to witness. The shocked gasps and murmurs from the assembled family members only fueled my righteous indignation. "No, Geraldine," I countered, my voice ringing with conviction. "For once in your miserable life, you're the one who doesn't understand. Your reign of manipulation and deceit ends here." Mitchell, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up, his voice laced with disbelief and hurt. "Mom, is this true? Have you really been betraying us all this time?" Geraldine's gaze flickered towards him, a desperate attempt at feigning innocence, but the veil had been lifted, and the truth was inescapable. As she opened her mouth to spew more lies, I cut her off with a resolute finality. "It's over, Geraldine. The games, the manipulation, all of it. You're going to face the consequences of your actions, and there's nowhere left for you to hide." In that pivotal moment, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. Geraldine's carefully constructed web of deceit lay in tatters, and the once formidable puppet master found herself hopelessly ensnared by her own machinations. The battle had been waged, and I had emerged the victor, not through underhanded tactics, but through an unwavering commitment to truth, justice, and the preservation of the bonds she had sought to sever. As Geraldine's venomous glare bored into me, I met her gaze with a steely resolve. This was merely the beginning of her reckoning, and I would ensure she faced the full weight of her transgressions, no matter how long it took. The aftermath of the explosive family dinner left a palpable tension in the air. Geraldine, her facade of benevolence shattered, had retreated into a seething silence, a caged predator biding her time. But I refused to be intimidated. With Lucas's unwavering support, we set about methodically dismantling Geraldine's twisted financial web, piece by damning piece. "I've secured injunctions to freeze her offshore accounts," Lucas announced one afternoon, a triumphant glint in his eyes. "She won't be able to access a single cent of her ill-gotten gains." Relief washed over me, but I knew this was merely the first step. Geraldine's depravity ran deeper than just financial deceit. She had systematically preyed upon the trust of her own family for years, leaving a trail of broken bonds in her wake. As if on cue, Lucas's laptop chimed with an incoming message. His brow furrowed as he scanned the contents, and a heavy silence hung in the air. "What is it?" I prodded, my heart rate quickening. Lucas looked up, his expression grave. "It's from an anonymous source, someone who's been tracking Geraldine's activities for years." He pivoted the screen towards me, revealing a meticulously detailed dossier. Page after page laid bare Geraldine's intricate schemes, her manipulation of family members, her callous disregard for the collateral damage she left in her wake. "This goes back decades," Lucas murmured, his voice laced with disbelief. "She's been doing this since before Mitchell was born, bleeding her victims dry, then discarding them like yesterday's trash." A sickening realization dawned as I combed through the damning evidence. Geraldine's machinations extended far beyond our family. She was a cancer that had metastasized, leaving a trail of shattered lives and fractured relationships in her wake. But buried within the dossier was a glimmer of hope, a pattern, a weakness in her intricate web of deceit. With renewed determination, Lucas and I pored over the details, formulating a plan to not only expose Geraldine's misdeeds to the world, but to ensure she faced the full weight of legal and social consequences. The days that followed were a whirlwind of strategy sessions, gathering evidence, and securing the cooperation of those Geraldine had wronged in the past. With each step, the noose around her tightened, her once formidable empire crumbling under the weight of her own hubris. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. Geraldine, summoned under the guise of a family gathering, arrived with her usual air of entitled superiority. But the moment she stepped through the door, she knew something was amiss. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing at the assembled group of familiar faces, victims of her deceit, now united in righteous indignation. Before she could utter another word, the damning evidence was laid bare. Financial records, witness testimonies, a meticulous paper trail that left no room for doubt or manipulation. Geraldine's composure crumbled, her carefully cultivated mask shattering as the full weight of her transgressions pressed down upon her. In that moment, she was reduced to a pathetic, cowering shell of her former self, a once mighty puppeteer whose strings had been severed. As the authorities arrived to escort her away, her venomous gaze found mine, burning with impotent rage and hatred. But I met her stare with unwavering resolve, secure in the knowledge that justice had prevailed. Geraldine's reign of terror was over, and the healing could finally begin, not just for our family, but for all those she had callously exploited and discarded throughout her twisted campaign of domination. It was a bittersweet victory, but one that carried with it the promise of a future untainted by her malignant influence. And as the door closed behind her, I knew that the scars she had inflicted would eventually fade, replaced by the unbreakable bonds of those who had banded together to confront her evil head-on. The weeks following Geraldine's downfall were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and untangling the tangled web she had woven. But through it all, a sense of liberation permeated our lives, a weight lifted from our collective shoulders. As the dust settled, the true extent of her depravity became increasingly clear. Countless victims, spanning decades, stepped forward with their own harrowing tales of manipulation and betrayal. It was a sobering reminder of the depths to which she had sunk in her pursuit of power and control. Throughout the ordeal, Mitchell remained by my side, a constant source of support and remorse. The scales had fallen from his eyes, and he now saw his mother's actions for what they truly were, a calculated campaign of emotional and financial exploitation. "I'm so sorry, Sam," he murmured one evening as we sat together, the weight of his guilt palpable. "For being so blind, for letting her come between us." I reached out, taking his hand in mine. "What matters now is that we're on the other side of it. We've reclaimed our lives, our family." A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, and I saw a glimmer of the man I had fallen in love with, the one untainted by Geraldine's toxic influence. In the months that followed, we threw ourselves into rebuilding, not just our finances, but the foundation of trust and intimacy that had been so insidiously eroded. It wasn't easy, but with each step, the wounds began to heal, and the bond between us grew stronger than ever before. Mitchell stepped up, becoming a true partner in every sense of the word. Gone were the days of him deferring to his mother's manipulative whims. In their place was a newfound resolve to be the husband and father his family deserved. As for me, the ordeal had sparked a fire within, a determination to never again allow myself to be a victim. I threw myself into my graphic design courses with renewed vigor, channeling my experiences into a portfolio that would serve as a testament to my resilience. And through it all, Marie remained our guiding light, her innocent joy and unfailing love, a constant reminder of why we had fought so hard to preserve the sanctity of our family. It was during one of our regular family outings to the park that a chance encounter occurred, one that would serve as a powerful affirmation of the journey we had undertaken. As Marie played on the swings, a familiar figure approached, her expression a mix of trepidation and cautious hope. "Samantha," the woman began, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know if you remember me, but—" "Sarah," I interjected, recognition dawning. She was one of the many victims who had come forward during Geraldine's unraveling, her life upended by my former mother-in-law's machinations. A tentative smile tugged at her lips. "I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart. What you did, exposing that woman's true nature, it's given me a chance to rebuild, to reclaim what she stole from me." Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of gratitude, of relief. In that moment, I realized that our victory extended far beyond our own family. It was a triumph for all those who had suffered at Geraldine's hands. As Sarah embraced me, her words echoed in my heart. "You've shown us all what true strength and resilience look like. We'll never forget what you've done for us." And in that moment, any lingering doubts or regrets melted away. The road had been long and arduous, but we had emerged from the darkness, stronger and more united than ever before. Geraldine's reign of terror was over, and in its place blossomed the promise of a future untainted by her poisonous influence. A future built on the unbreakable bonds of family, trust, and the indomitable human spirit.